Welcome to FreedomCast. This podcast was started by a dude buying and selling fitness equipment in his backyard. In less than a year, I quit my Fortune 100 job and started a fitness empire. I now interview business owners who have built businesses around helping others get healthy and active. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's informative. It's what fitness should be. FreedomCast is brought to you by Freedom Fitness Equipment in Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's get rolling. How did it all get started anyway?
The biggest thing, if I think back to it, I remember I was in school. I was at University of Georgia, not sure exactly what I wanted to do. Was between a couple of things, and then, my mom's like, well, you love martial arts, you love training, you love working out. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go into like physical therapy or something, as far as, and that made sense. And for me being kind of an aimless, 20-something-year-old, sure, whatever, I'm just going to go to college and see what happens, in the meantime, have as much fun as I can. I don't know if you've ever heard of what happens at UGA, but it's a pretty awesome party school. So I was like, sure. But again, I kind of went that track. I actually took some Japanese classes too, because I thought maybe that might, martial arts. I thought the culture, I thought that might be fun. Travel, that type of thing. I know there were some programs. Mm-hmm. And, the more I got into exercise science, you're in there with pre-physical therapy people. Again, this is like late 90s I graduated around 2000, 2001. Physical therapy was a very, very competitive, it still is, very competitive field. And I'm in there with a lot of pre-med and pre-physical therapy people and athletic training. Not taking my classes that seriously, passing, doing okay, but none of these professors were looking at me and saying, oh, that's grad student material. I'm just happy to be passing and doing okay, like passing by the skin of my teeth sometimes. But also during this time at the university, I started martial arts when I was relatively young. It was a big part of my life. It actually got me in pretty good shape. And when I got to college, I was already a black belt in Taekwondo. I thought I was like a badass, all these little things. I was like, oh, okay. And I joined the karate club, which was actually a Taekwondo club. And I worked out with them. So I was actually an assistant instructor with that group. I actually taught recreational classes at the student center. And so it was a big part of, martial arts was a big part of it. I kind of started looking at exercise science. Wow, it's really cool. I understand the whole science behind everything. And then I met up with a group of guys that were, basically doing what was the predecessor to what most modern MMA is at this point. They're studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We were learning boxing. This is like, I hate to age myself this way, but this is like right around UFC 1. Okay. They just had UFC 259. Dang. So this is UFC 1 and 2 and wow. All, one that was actually fought here in Charlotte, I think it was UFC 2. Okay. And so I'm training. I get into, I've always been into martial arts. I get more into the full contact, competitive boxing, kickboxing. Mm-hmm. We had a Muay Thai coach. I got into that competitively. And then we get into jiu-jitsu and we're training. I kind of start to shy away a little bit more from the traditional styles and start getting in my head, maybe I want to be a fighter. This would be really, really cool. I always, I kind of get into that. I like the full contact. My brother's funny. He always wondered why I got into it. I have an older brother. He's 8 years older than I am. And I always tell him it's his fault because he never beat me up enough. So I never felt like I could handle myself if things came down to the wire. So I got into martial arts. I made sure I tried to make sure beyond a reasonable doubt that I could. And then even when I was a black belt and I was a high school and then early college, I thought I was a badass. I actually entered a tough man competition, which is all boxing.
Oh, wow. And
it was pretty popular. And I proceeded to get my ass handed to me by somebody who knew how to box a little bit. Oh, and I was like, wow, I don't know this. And my mentality was a little bit, well, if I don't know it, I better learn it. So I found the boxing coach that was actually helping run that tough man competition. Got into boxing, and then we, again, my friends, we were training in Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and then, we were watching the UFC, but then back then Pride Fighting Championship was a big thing out of Japan, so that was where some of the top MMA guys were, and it kind of fueled that fire, like, all right, I'm almost done with this school thing, And that's, my parents are Filipino. They're very set on your finishing college no matter what. You have no choice. And so I said, all right. I finished college. I got my degree in exercise science with absolutely no intention of going to PT school, because I was like, there's no way, unless I went to the Caribbean or something like that, like what med students do when they can't get into med school here, they go to the Caribbean. Unless I did something like that, I was sure as hell not getting into any program. So I decided, all right, get into training, get into fighting. Fought for a few years, had a lot of fun. Amateurs, pros, both Muay Thai, MMA, some not so official boxing, and non-sanctioned boxing, but had a lot of fun with it, loved it. And when it had kind of run its course, I've suffered a few big injuries, a couple of knockouts along the way. You realize, all right, well, I'm not going to be the welterweight world champion one day. So fortunately, my parents made me finish college, which I did, and I had a lot of different options coming out. And along the way, what I started to understand was, like, I really enjoyed coaching people. I started coaching people from the time I was 16 at a taekwondo school, and I really enjoyed it. I worked with kids, I worked with adults, and then through college, again, instructing, coaching a lot. And then the more I trained in mixed martial arts, MMA, I really liked working with the new people, getting them started, getting them into it. And right as I was about to try to figure out what was going on, a friend of mine, this guy Jeff, he graduated recently, and he was actually a director at a personal training company in Atlanta. And he was in Athens. He'd gone to UGA. We talked a little bit, and he was like, I'm looking for trainers to, work this one area in Atlanta. Would you be willing to check it out, move? And it was kind of my time to get out of Athens, get away from fighting a little bit. I knew I would probably keep fighting if I was around that environment, because I just loved it so much. It was part of what I was. But I knew in my head, it's time to step away and move on to the next phase of my life. And so I moved to Atlanta, and I started personal training out there. Loved the training. The company was pretty cool. Everything was good. Hated Atlanta. Didn't realize that was not where I wanted to stay for any amount of time. And from there, but realized, like, wow, this personal training thing's a lot of fun. I really like it. I really enjoy it. I love helping people get in shape. I like seeing progress. Like, when I coach people, and like, again, when I was coaching fighters along the way, it was something that was really neat to me, and I got a lot of enjoyment from it. And I just, it's like, this is something I gotta keep going with, because it's something I'm really passionate about. To see someone make a lot of progress made me feel really, really good. And whether it was in their fitness, whether it was in their their skills, what they were learning how to do. So that's how kind of I got into training. And I actually moved to Charlotte I was in Atlanta, and then eventually moved to Charlotte in about 2006, 2007. Okay. My parents lived here, and as does my brother. Mom had a business making and delivering sushi for multiple areas around here, so I helped her do that, and just kind of getting my footing while I was staying with them. And then I ended up there's a club, Charlotte Athletic Club, which is right in Uptown. And it was called something else different, under different ownership at the time. But I walked through, and the fitness director there saw me walking through that Overstreet Mall in Uptown, and asked me, "Hey, you need a gym membership? You're looking for this?" I was like, "Well," and I looked at her. I was like, "Well, actually, I'm a trainer, and I would really like to see if you have any job openings." And she's like, "Oh, great. Well, here's my email. Send me your resume." Well, I have an exercise science degree. I had gotten my CSCS from the NSCA, which is something where you need a degree to get it. And a few weeks later, she calls me back and says, "Hey, why don't you come in and interview?" And I started training there, and when that first opened up. And it was a great gym, got a lot of great clients, some I still train to this day. So, nice. And, a lot of contacts I made, and that was kind of the initial part of my training. I worked there long enough and obviously showed certain qualifications, so I eventually became a fitness director there. So I went from a trainer, and then once that fitness director who had actually hired me on left, they asked me to fill in the role. And through kind of trial by fire, I learned sales. I learned how to talk to people, get them interested, and then sell them training packages, set them up with different trainers. And it was a great experience, but I hated the hours I was keeping. I was there all day. and realized that now I'm not training as much. I'm getting other people training clients, but I'm not training as much. And I'm doing all this admin office work, and it got into my head. I hate all of this stuff, but I'm doing it because I'm getting a salary, I'm getting paid. But I'm also looking at some of the contracts for training that I'm selling, like especially some of the ones that I'm training, like stupid amounts of money. And I'm like, why don't I do this for myself if I'm going to be doing this? So that's where I started to branch out a little bit. I started doing a little bit of my own thing on the side, started training out of another gym, another trainer that I knew. And then at one point, at Charlotte Athletic Club, the original owner decided to sell. It changed ownership, and the new ownership came in. They were actually people that I'd worked with, and some of them I actually had trained before. And they looked at my hours. They said, "It looks like you're starting to split your hours off. You're not here as often, and we just need a little bit more of a commitment from that." But one of the new owners, he said, who was a very successful entrepreneur at the time, he said, "Look, it looks like you're trying to do your own thing." He's like, "We'd love to keep you on. We think you're a great trainer, but this might be the move. This might be the time to make the move if you want to make it. We've got a great staff. We've got trainers here. We'd love to keep you on, but it seems like this is what you want. So just go for it. Don't sit around and wait on it." And which was really cool for him to advise me that way. And I said, "You're right." That's absolutely the case. So I started training renting space out of another gym with another trainer. And eventually built up my clientele there, was working out of there. At first I was renting space, and we tried a partnership. If anybody's been part of a business partnership that went not successful, that's pretty much what happened. Again, just learning by the mistakes we make, but that's how it didn't work out long term. And so I kind of had to decide. I was put in a position where I was like, look, what kept me from going out on my own and having the confidence in myself was pretty much now at a necessity. I got to go and do this on my own, because I don't want to have a partner in this situation right now. I just don't. It's not ideal. Obviously, I was very soured on partnerships at that point because it didn't end well. So I was fortunately able to get out of it without too many repercussions, and started doing my own thing. Started training out of a gym in Noda, the building which doesn't really exist anymore because they've torn everything down over there. Oh yeah, it was called Ultimate Gym at the time. Okay. I think they still exist. They're just in another spot. And then was given the opportunity out of the location we're at now to train out of there. Rent space, train out of there. But I was given the opportunity they said, "What do we need in this space?" And I said, "Well, this is what I think would be really cool." And the owner of the building said, "That sounds great." And they own very successful businesses. They're like, "Sounds good to me." And they just started getting equipment. And they had a bunch of equipment that they had. And then they said, "Oh, should we get this?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And I would come forward with like, "All right, well, this is more of an economical side." No, just get the good stuff. Okay, yeah, right. Absolutely. So that's how we are where we are now. I mean, it's changed little configurations. We've changed bays a couple of times, but it's still remained. We've got a great space over at 200 Dalton Avenue, and we're still learning, still talking. Trying to learn as much as I can. Trying not to learn as much by mistake as I have in the past, and but it's. Now, I know that I can be successful as a trainer on my own. Now it's like, all right, as a business owner, as someone who's working with new trainers, bringing training trainers and personal trainers, can I be successful in the same way as far as coaching, as far as getting them to the right level, building a team, and basically creating something that pushes me on to the next part of my life, whatever that is. I love training. Now I'm running a business. And there's a lot of different places I think there are opportunities for. I'd like this to be successful enough to springboard me to whatever the next thing might be. Like maybe that's real estate, international. I don't know. I have a lot of different ideas now, and it's kind of opened my eyes to be like, all right, well, this is just one step. This isn't the end all be all. This is I just turned 44. I hope that there's still a lot left. So
you don't look like 44. Holy cow. I thought you were in your 30s.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So hopefully that reflects in how much time I have left. Hopefully I have a lot more time and a lot more opportunities to do things. So, but yeah, I still love training. I still love working with people. I have specific things I really enjoy doing. Like when someone comes in, I want to learn self-defense, MMA, mixed martial arts, Thai boxing, even. It's like, that's a fun thing for me. I actually have to sit back sometimes, and if it creeps into my head that, I got to go to work today, I have to kick myself in the ass and be like, you get to go teach people and do the thing that you love to do day in and day out for money, for your living. It's like, one, that's not really working. That's like living your dream. And two, I meet great people along the way. I made amazing friends along the way, clients have become friends, and it's, I feel like I'm incredibly lucky to be able to do what I do. So, because I listen to some people every day, and they're, whether it's their job, their career, their family situation, whatever it is, people that make far more money than I'll ever make, or people that have more things, but it seems like, every day's a grind for them until they retire. And then I'm not sure what they're looking forward to once they retire. So no, I feel incredibly fortunate to do what I do. I enjoy what I do. I have a lot of fun with it. My favorite thing these days is learning new ways to train people, more efficient ways to train people, things that integrate what I've learned as far as through martial arts and through studying other training modalities. So, I'm in a position I would love to get to the point where maybe not doing as much training and just spending more time working, obviously as this pandemic lift, the restrictions lift, traveling the country, traveling the world, working with people that have different ideas and being able to implement them into an effective training style. It's always evolving with us. We're always changing things. I'm always getting new stuff, working with new coaches, and sometimes it's just an incremental change that makes things a little bit better. Sometimes it's something that overhauls how we think about things. And I don't feel I think there's sometimes there's a goal, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. And, I like to figure out all the different ways and figure out, all right, which is the best way for this one person. It might be different for a person who's been sedentary most of their life. It might be different for a person who's been who's like a high level, either D1 level athlete or a professional athlete at one point. It might have been someone who was athletic all the way up to a certain point, and then for 20 years they did nothing, but that's still a different individual than the person who's never trained before. It's different for males, for females. I work with kids. I love working with younger kids, because I know what I got out of martial arts and the confidence it gave me. And especially through such a tumultuous time as being a teenager, where everything's either the best thing that's ever happened or the worst thing in the world. And I know it kind of balanced me out a little bit. It helped me through those really tough times. It gave me the ability, especially after really hard workouts, especially in karate when I was younger, to say, okay, I thought this was the end of the world before session. Now afterwards, I'm totally cool with everything and I can handle this. So I think that translates to a lot of different types of training. So yeah, that's like, in a nutshell, that's kind of the short story version of it. And I love what I do. I every day I feel like I'm lucky that I get to do it. And I'm just trying to, in all honesty, become a better business owner so I can reach more people, train more good trainers, and grow our company, grow our brand, and see what comes next and be excited about it. So
that's awesome. Well, what is the next evolution in your mind of Edge Performance Training? Is it you and a group of trainers actually getting national and either franchising or going to people as kind of a custom training program, or are you guys are you trying to stay within the Charlotte area, and then you're doing different things obviously as a business owner?
I think a lot of it comes down to, I do want, as far as growth, I mean, I'm not looking to go huge beyond Charlotte at this point. If I'm honest, I'd like to have multiple locations in like Charlotte, North Lake, all those different areas. But, I feel like a lot of times I'm so focused on the evolution and the change and the development of the business that maybe I would like to get the business to the point where I could have somebody that was like, all right, handling day to day, handling how the training program goes, and I'm kind of the R&D guy that just happens to be the one who started it all, but I'd like and helps the evolution of it. As far as going national, as far as like, I'd like to have, I want to, where we're at now with our location, I like to have as many trainers as I can, get our, have our numbers set up so like, all right, once I hit this point, we're looking for our own space, or I'm looking to buy my own building. I'm not big on renting space, but I do what I need to do, and I have a great place to do it right now. But if I can get to the point where I own my own building, again, with that real estate thing in the back of my head, owning dirt, owning a place, that's important, and then building from there. And I think that's the biggest thing, and also being able to work with lots of different people. I have some coaches that love to work with athletes, and I encourage them to say, hey, you work with the general population, but if you want to work with athletes, let me know who you want to talk to. There's some great coaches out there that I've met along the way. So let me know, and I'll pay for the cert, I'll pay for the training, I'll pay for the seminar. Just let me know what you want to do. So again, facilitating growth and development, not just in my clients, but also a lot with my trainers and the people who are coming in. Got some really, really motivated and exciting trainers that are coming up. And if anything, there's going to be times when we agree and disagree, but at least I want to point them in the right direction and say, all right, well, this is the way of thinking, and I feel like the evolution goes this way, and here, have at it. And let's see where you think it's going, or where it's headed, what the next move is. And if we disagree on stuff, it's like we can have educated discussions on why I feel one way and they feel another. Maybe we come to an understanding. Maybe our thought process is a little different, but like I said, it's all about growth and understanding and helping them become the best trainers they can be, and then giving them the resources to do so.
Nice. Yeah, it's a very different methodology, I would say, than a lot of personal training centers, because you're actually investing the time and the energy not into the client base exclusively, but into the person that actually is going to drive the results for the client, in this case, the trainer. I haven't heard that very much. It's usually, I got my certification, I'm doing my own thing, I've got my own, keeping up with whatever the latest, in training in this particular area is. Yeah. And you work with the client and they'll get whatever results, being Gen Pop, they will. But like that's a very different, that's a much better dynamic in my mind, because you're actually, so how do you stay current, and how do you help the other trainers stay current? Like what kind of resources are you able to provide, but also with your own personal development in that space?
So a lot of times, again, it's just, just like everybody else, I see cool stuff on YouTube, I look into it. Sometimes it's YouTube. Sometimes it's working with different coaches, knowing a coach and then them referring, hey, I worked with the guys at, Ultimate Sandbag, DVRT, or I've worked with these guys, I think they're really cool. I worked with, in kettlebells, I worked with so-and-so, and it, I'm able to, just through the network of coaches that I've gotten to know, I hear a lot of cool things. Like I went to a kettlebell certification up in New Jersey. Well, the reason I know that coach is because he did some really interesting things with mace bells, and the way he implemented it. He had a cool thing on Vivo. I got it. I learned a lot of the cool stuff. I went up there to get the certification, and then we become good friends. His name's Daniel Ramsey, and then I touch base with him every once in a while. He tells me when a really cool coach is coming through his place, whether it's Rick Brown, who's like basically considered the godfather of mace bells here in the U.S. Not that means anything to anybody, but he, for those of you who are into mace bells and that type of different implement training, he's like, I got to go and train with him and get certified under him. The kettlebell guy, I keep forgetting his name now, but he's one of the top Gear Boy guys in the States, and he did a certification up there as well, so I got to meet him.
Nice.
And it's through the networking, and then I'm also part of a number of masterminds with other fitness business owners here. So now that's like over 100 coaches all over the U.S. and actually some overseas now that I can get, I know they're great coaches, I know they're good people, and I value their opinions. So when someone says, hey, you gotta check this guy out, this guy's got some really cool stuff, we find ourselves discussing more of the business side of things and how to run our business as well. But anytime something comes up that's cool in training, and all of us who like to geek out over like new types of training, we're like, oh, that's so cool, let's go check it out. Unfortunately, I'm in the position where I have the means to be able to go and either attend a cool seminar for a weekend. Right before the pandemic caused all the restrictions, I had so many things on the books ready to go. I was like, nice. Oh, I'm going to go this place now, then I'm going to go here, then I'm going to travel over here and train with these guys. So that's where a lot of my motivation comes from. And it's, and like I said, I just find myself reading, learning from new. It's not always necessarily from just fitness guys, a lot of, life improvement type guys, like Anthony Robbins and people like that. You start looking at how they motivate people, how they stay motivated themselves, how they teach that to other people. Talk to therapists and psychologists, and they understand. I have friends who are physical therapists, and I talk to them about how they deal with their clients and how through specific policies they're taught to use very specific language when working with patients. And I found that interesting, but then my good friend Amanda, she explained to me, she's like, well, I can't say this to this patient the wrong way because I need them to stay motivated, right? And I need them to look at it a specific way, and it helps their recovery. And taking that into consideration, understanding those things. So it's not just in the world of fitness or personal training. It also has a lot to do with just other successful businesses. To be a successful personal training gym, well, you have to take notes when it comes to when people in the hospitality business and very successful hospitality businesses like Zimmerman's, which is up in Minnesota, or different companies like that are super successful. Once you start getting into it, it's the service they provide the customer. With a lot of our coaches, we talk about more business than anything, because the baseline is we're all good coaches, we're all good trainers, we know how to get people in shape, but how you deliver that service and how people see it, that becomes more important, because how you treat the customer, how they perceive your company, how they perceive the gym. Is it their third place to come to outside of home and work that they love to come to? Then if you create that type of environment for them, then they're never going to leave you. They're going to stay with you for as long as they can, because all of a sudden you're part of their life, you're part of their everyday. And that's what we always strive for, and we can always do it better. And things might change. People have different ideas of how to get people to recognize that. So that's the biggest part. Is again, you're there. And I'm just like anybody else. I've gotten complacent for a little while, then I'm like, oh man, I got to get on this. It's just like with fitness. It's just like with health and everything like that. You hit a plateau for a little while, you drop off, and then all of a sudden, hey, I got to get back on this, because if I'm not moving forward, I'm moving backwards. So
nice. Let me think here. So what is your, how to describe this? Who do you take inspiration from in terms of training? Do you have a specific methodology that you follow with most Gen Pop, or I know it's custom to each client based on what they need, but are there certain methodologies that, especially right now, you're very much into and you take inspiration from?
One of the groups I actually got certified with, which I actually have to re-up because I wasn't able to do any of the virtual certifications, was Original Strength. Okay. And they're out of Fuquay Varina. That's what the name bots off of my head. Yep. Tim Anderson, Daniel Amito, they're all fantastic coaches. And I learned, one of the things I loved about their method was, their theory and their idea, and I totally buy into it, is the idea that all humans understand how to move correctly. It's just that through bad habits, lack of movement, bad diet, all these things, we start to move incorrectly, and that tends to lead to a lot of the issues that people have later on: bad backs, bad shoulders. We sit down far too much. We don't move enough. Yeah. And so we start to lose the ability to move correctly. And their point being, one of the things they bring to as proof of the point is, look at like I don't know if you have any kids or not, but if you have like a 2 or a 3-year-old and they go down to pick something up, they do the picture perfect squat, and they've never had a coach in their life. They don't understand words that you're saying yet, but they are able to move perfectly. And so that lends itself to the idea that inherently the way we learn how to move, it's instinctive. We develop a very specific way in order to be able to move correctly. And then at that age, when we actually become bipedal, even before we start crawling, we're breathing a certain way. Then we're moving a certain way. And then once we start crawling, we're crawling a specific way. And then once we start crawling and we start wanting to be more mobile, we go through these very specific movements that start to load our hips a certain way that allow us to become bipedal and be strong enough. And then when we are bipedal and we want to move, initially, that's why that 2 or 3-year-old has that perfect squat, because they learned a very specific process of how to move. And then, but the great thing that I've seen, and the way I've seen it in a number of the clients that I've worked with, and then it's actually part of our intro and assessment, is when we reintroduce some of these movements, like basic breathing, like head nods where you're picking your head up and breathe, where you're loading a breathing pattern, or basically doing something while you're breathing correctly. Crawls, very specific, like rocking back and forth where you're on hands and knees and you're rocking back and forth. All those things, when I point them out, especially people who are parents who have kids, they're like, oh yeah, I remember when my baby did this. I remember when they did this, When we reintroduce it, there's almost immediately a result, like in that moment, there's 5 seconds later, there's a result, like they're either the muscles have loosened up and they're looser than they should be, and we're not stretching them out any. They actually squat better. I had a girl once be like, that's the first time I ever did a push-up, like a real push-up. And it was just from breathing. It was just from a specific movements, because all of those things, facilitate better movement. And it's a big part of our warm-up. And so now that we understand that, now we're able to introduce that, as trainers, as a coach, I can sit there and cue somebody all day. All right, head up, shoulders back. All right, push your belly out, all those things. But we find the more we do these movements that, that we learn, the ways that we learned how to move when we were infants and toddlers, the less I have to cue people, the more they instinctively move well. And people grasp onto that very quickly. A lot of coaches, myself included, we use the functional movement screening. And that's developed by, Gray Cook, absolute genius, amazing coach. But when you start getting people into some of the corrective exercises, it all sounds like PT. It sounds like physical therapy. All right, I need you to do 15 of these every day. I need you to do 25 of these. It sounds like a medical prescription. And only the most disciplined people buy into that and end up doing it. Hey, did you do what I need you to? Yeah, no, I forgot. I was like, it takes 5 minutes, dude. But they don't buy into it. When people see the results and they feel the results immediately, like, oh, wow, I feel so much better. All right, I'll just take 5 minutes and do these exercises. And they're like, yeah, I love the way it makes me feel. I'm ready to work out. I'm ready to move. So, obviously, there's the things that we do that are obviously going to be effective and helpful, but they require a certain amount of devotion, time, discipline, all those things. But when people buy into it because they feel it immediately, it's not willpower. It's not, I forced myself to do this. It's like, I'm going to go do this. And obviously we want a lot of our training to feel that way. I mean, don't get me wrong. We still push. We still try to get as much out of everybody. There's a inherent value in that, pushing yourself past a certain point and challenging yourself. But when it comes to warm-ups, when it comes to moving well, then having something that people grasp onto immediately and be like, oh, wow, this changes everything, then that's fantastic. And I think they've done a great job with that at Original Strength.
Gotcha. I'll have to check that out. Where do you want to get a client to when they come to you, whether it's for weight loss or rehab or, gaining strength? Is the goal to bring them to a certain point where they can then continue on their own, or do you think there's always a need for, because some of the stuff you're explaining seems somewhat complex, is there always going to be a need for at least some level of assistance, say with edge performance training or a personal trainer along the way, or at least recurring to where you can continue to check in?
I feel like, so ideally, like the perfect client would come to us, and maybe they've trained before, maybe they haven't. They come to us. And again, this isn't a perfect world. They come, they train with us. If they do the personal training on a regular basis, they start to understand movement really well. They feel really good. And from that point, we're willing to say, a lot of times I'll say, well, why don't you move to our small group training, which is 6 people, but you don't need me looking at every little movement now. You move well enough. And we have people that go straight into our small group training. It's customizable, and our coaches are good enough to be able to see and correct and make sure that they're moving well. But maybe this person who's one-on-one is like, all right, let me move into the small group training. I think I can do that. They get into it. They enjoy it. They like the camaraderie. They're not going to stay there just because, this person's telling me what to do. I mean, most people do like that because they don't want to think when they leave work. They just want to go and work out and not have to put the thought process in there. They don't have the bandwidth. Their brain's fried at the end of the day. They're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it and make sure I don't get hurt while I'm doing it. But past that, most people come in because they enjoy it, because they like the workout. They see what it's done. They want to keep making progress. And any trainer will tell you it's the accountability more than anything else that people are looking for. The knowledge that I have, the knowledge that most trainers have, even the most cutting edge guys, if it's all on YouTube, it's all on the web. There's plenty of that we're all about information now. We have more information at our fingertips than ever before, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's overwhelming. And
it's super overwhelming. So it's not like people can't go out and learn what we learn on some level, but if I need a lawyer, I'm not going to go to law school and learn everything they need to learn so I can do that myself. Fitness is kind of the same way. You have, if you come to a specialist that understands it straight up, you don't have to sit there, read through all the magazines, read through all the information, identify what you believe in, what you don't believe in, and by the time you're done with that, you don't have time to work out anymore. You don't have time for everything else, and as we all know, time's like the most precious commodity we have. We can always make more money. We can always get other things. We can never get time back. So back to your question, I feel like, ideally it usually stops at the small group and then people keep training. And, I think most of them are capable of doing it on their own, but they enjoy the camaraderie. They enjoy the guidance. They enjoy the fact that they're always progressing, and then there's something new that we throw at them, and then something different that's given to them, and they don't have to try and go out and find it themselves. If people move to a point, most people need someone to push them. One of the things I always talk about is look, Usain Bolt's the fastest man on the planet. He's got a coach. He's got multiple coaches. He's got all sorts of coaches. He's probably the most inherently talented person on the planet, but and you can go across the board with any number of sports and find those people. Michael Jordan had coaches. LeBron has coaches. He has strength coaches. He has all sorts of people, speed coaches, all these different types of things. I was watching a UFC, Israel Adesanya. He has a breathing coach, wow. And he says it's changed everything for him. Wow. So, everybody can use some coaching along the way, and especially if they want to be at the top of their game. Now, your peak performance might not have to be not have to do with being the best at a sport, the best at best at an event. But as a human being, as a person, if your health is ideal, if you reach a very high level of health, then one of the things I love about training is that if you get to a high level of health, not becoming overly obsessive with it, but get to that a certain level, then it positively affects every other part of your life. You're a better dad. You're a better spouse. You're a better worker. You're a better, you have more energy for all those things. You have a better attitude towards almost everything, and that's the beauty of it, right? We always can work towards something. And so as long as the workout itself doesn't take over your life, everything else tends to flourish around it. So that's the best thing about this. And that's what I always tell my coaches. When I talk to coaches, especially when we get into sales training, I'm like, look, we're not selling them a used car that they don't need.
Yeah.
We're showing them how to live their lives so they can get the most out of it, so that they have the energy to maybe get the next promotion and maybe walk into that next board meeting and act like they own it and or maybe like, have the energy to play with their kids so their kids are happy, or play with your dog and make sure they're happy, any of those things, it kind of fulfills that, you start to fulfill that potential that you have. And, when you're in a position to help people fulfill their potential, not just in fitness, but every other aspect of their life, then, what more could you ask for? I had a client who lost a substantial amount of weight, but the coolest thing was listening to his wife talk about, I never knew him when he was in this kind of shape.
Wow.
He's, he has energy, he's exciting. I'm sure it entailed all sorts of other things that were positive in their lives as far as a relationship goes. And then his son, who was actually at the time a very good football player at one of the local high schools, his son would be like, because I worked with his son a little bit instead of one of our coaches, he'll be like, one of the coaches in their gym, he'd be like, man, I'm super proud of my dad. That's so cool that he did that. Wow. I really respect that. And that's, as a parent, as a parent with a teenage kid, like to say that your teenage kid says they respect you. I mean, that's a great thing, to hear that, it's not like down the road when they're adults and they're like, oh yeah, I really appreciate that. Or I wish it's like, as a teenager, they say they respect them. So I think, like I said, the effect, the overall effect that we have on people's lives, that I think that's immeasurable. And that's why I love what we do, what we can do, and what we try to, have everybody feel when they work out with us, regardless of the level, like whether I'm working with them on MMA, whether they're just coming in for fitness, weight loss, getting stronger. I've got a lot of guys that are in fantastic shape, but they're, because of my background, they're learning jiu-jitsu, they're learning mixed martial arts, they're learning kickboxing, and they're like, this is a whole world I never saw before, I didn't realize, and it's really neat to learn something new. Yeah. And you and I both know that, if you keep learning throughout your life, you keep developing, and you don't go stagnant, you don't just get into this normal doldrums everyday life type thing, especially if your job lends itself to that type of pattern. So
yeah, absolutely. I found fitness is so much more, well, especially you mentioned a really good point about the used car sales aspect of the fitness industry. I feel like there is that where people just want to, like, equipment. I could just bang out, at the lowest price possible, a bunch of equipment, but it's really not about the equipment itself. It's about what you can do with the bar, with the plates, with the machines, to have a better life. And you're so much more, there's so much more longevity, not only from a client standpoint, but also psychologically, intellectually, emotionally. People keep, you have so much more of a profound relationship with people.
Absolutely. And people respect that. And and it's obviously it's not a relationship that you're hoping just for that moment to sell them something that they may or may not need. It's, can I be a part of this person's life for long enough to make a difference in that time? And if they're with you long enough, they see that difference. And I have clients who pay me a lot of money, and every day they leave the session and they're like, thank you so much, I got so much out. And I'm like, well, thanks for letting me do this and letting me be a part of your life in this manner, in a way, in an industry where I can make a living doing what I love to do and helping people and still make a good living and, be successful in a number of different ways. And that's like, I can't stress how fortunate I feel every time I work with somebody. And like a lot of these guys, I get a little bit of a workout in, and I'm showing them how to develop skills. And these are highly successful people. They can do whatever they want. And to be able to know that I'm helping them in this area of their life, and then they're like, this is amazing. This is a whole different thing, to see like that wonderment and to sense that feel of like, wow, they're gaining a whole lot of understanding, knowledge, and then they start reaching these different training levels and these abilities, and you see that happening. It's, I know parents feel that way with their kids. I feel that way with clients, regardless of their age. And it's great to see them, like, if I see one of my one client, Kim, who's over the last year lost 117 pounds, is almost at her goal of like 120, I believe. Wow. To see her live a completely different life now, to see her go through her days, like walk in, show up in class and be the baddest person in that class because she just been grinding it for a year and working hard, and having other people who are new in that class look up to her. When I know when she came in what what she was, how heavy she was and how hard she had to work at first, but to recognize, wow, she was able to grind it out through the pandemic, through all of these things, keep working and hit her goal. She's getting really close, and I told her we're gonna have a big party when you do hit that goal. And she's like, oh yeah, we are, absolutely, we're definitely having a big party. And I just feel fortunate to have been a part of that, and I know my coaches feel the same way. And I'm always looking, when I have somebody who sits in front of me considering our place for training, now I have that person who obviously I reference her, and then but also in my mind, it's like, I can make this difference happen. I know I can. I just need you to buy into the process, and I need you to commit to it and get into the right mindset and believe that you can do it, and we'll go from there. I've got the rest of this. Just I need you to like buy into the process and buy into what it's going to take. And it's not going to be easy, but nothing that's worth anything ever is. So
what is the key to that process? As in, what do you find is the most motivating to get people to change? Because it's changing a lifestyle, honestly, to lose 100 pounds, for example.
Absolutely.
Well,
anybody in fitness or any type of sales will say, and honestly, also in the world of life improvement in general, any type of change that you're trying to make for the positive, any type of alteration in your lifestyle day to day, it starts with understanding why you're doing it. And your why you're doing it can't be, I want to look good for the summer. That's a very superficial thing. And if I sit there and ask why to someone over and over again until they get sick of hearing me and they finally say, all right, and obviously there's a level of connection that happens when they finally get really honest with me and they tell me, oh, well, I was out with my husband or I was out with my wife and I saw them kind of look at this other person who was in really good shape, and I remember when they used to look at me like that. Now you're getting super personal. But that's where it has to go. Or maybe it'll be, I was playing around with my son the other day, and I used to be in really good shape, and I find myself out of breath, and I realize that I'm headed in the wrong direction. What can I do to make sure I can keep up with this kid? And that's part of initiating this relationship, is finding out personally what's the most important thing that's driving them. And when they understand that, and when they admit it, they might have come in saying, I just want to look better for the summer. And then 20 minutes later, I just don't feel good about myself because of X, because of this. Well, if they can come forth with that, and if they can, vocalize that and say, this is why I can't do it, this is what I really want, well, then I tell them, well, that's what we need to focus on, because this isn't going to be an easy journey. And when it does get tough, when you do get, if it's a weight loss person, when you get tempted to start comfort eating or doing all these things, you have to ask yourself, am I getting closer to that goal? Because that's what's important to me. And a gentleman recently was like, I want to be around for my 13-year-old kids. I'm 50 years old. I'm not in great shape. I want to be around for my kids. I want to be able to see, they're going to want to do more things. I got to be able to do it, And I was like, yeah, and they're going to eventually maybe have grandkids. Most parents want to be around for that too.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly say, what's your why? Why is this important? And then really push them towards that goal. And the great thing about having a trainer, having someone there for you, is like they're constantly redirecting you towards that goal. Like, hey, is this where you want to be right now? Or is this next action that you take, is that going to help you towards that? And inevitably people fall off and they make mistakes. And then at that point, a lot of people are of the all or nothing mindset, so they make a mistake. They're like, oh, screw it, I'm done. I don't need to do this anymore. And you'd be like, dude, that's just one decision. That's just one mistake you made along the way. Don't look back, look forward. Let's keep pushing. I know this can happen. So you have to, it's not usually just the workout. It's almost always the mindset. Can I make sure that they're in the right mindset to go? And if they're in the right mindset, I don't care if they have 500 pounds to lose, they'll lose it. Because if they're they're in that right headspace to where they're not going to let anything get in the way of that. And that's the most important thing, I think. And that's why, and that's part of when I meet a new client, I reiterate it constantly that that's what's important. that's how you become, and that goes for health, that goes for fitness, that goes for any aspect of your life, spirituality, work, your career, any of those things. Why are you doing it? To make more money. All right. It's not happiness, but okay, you'll find that out pretty quick.
Right.
Are you passionate about this? And then that brings about that motivation, that drive, I feel like. And I think that's the key is, can you get them into the mindset that puts them into that process where this is what's driving me and I'm not letting anything stop me. I might fall off every once in a while, but I'm always going to come back to center and say, this is what I need. This is what I want.
Yep. Any difficult, as you were building Edge Performance Training, just from a personal perspective, were there any difficult situations that you ran up against as you were bringing the business to where it is now?
Mm-hmm.
Any personal stories you can share about just being a business owner and developing that business and it being rough?
I think the hardest thing is, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, there was a failed partnership. I think more than anything, and again, that's a mistake I made more than once and hopefully won't make again, but it's this process of understanding, getting into this process of knowing that, this is a business. We have a very interrelational type business where we build relationships with people. We build relationships with other trainers. We become friends with people. And I feel like the most important thing in this process is you still have to treat it like a business. There's a lot of verbal agreements that happen. Mm-hmm. Well, there's also a lot of disagreements that happen down the road, and relationships are destroyed because people perceive things differently. If you've ever done any type of study on human memory, it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Eyewitnesses, like multiple ones, will see 10 different people will see 10 different things and recall them different ways.
Yeah.
So, for the sake of friendships and relationships, I think it's super important. You do get hard in copy, like gone over by a lawyer type agreements down when you make agreements, especially partnership agreements, especially, different, anytime you're doing anything with, potential business partners or people that you're joint venturing with, or other people, other business owners in other industries, when you lay out the expectations, lay those things out. A lot of people glaze over those or just kind of don't worry about it because, we're friends, we'll understand each other. It's like, that's a great way to make sure that friendship doesn't last through that process.
Yeah.
Because as soon as there's a misunderstanding and if you don't agree on something, then all of a sudden there's a problem. So sure. I think that's a big part of it, is treating this like a business and being a business person. Mm-hmm. A lot of trainers like, my business is different. We go on. It's like, no, it's a business.
Yeah.
And the law is going to look at it like a business, and God forbid you have to do any type of litigation, but there's a very specific things we put into place, and let's make sure that you're covered on all those areas. Yeah. So I think that's like one of the most important things to do when you're going through this and building your business, and just make it part of the process. And it's not you won't have to give it a second thought, and you won't have something come around and bite you in the ass later because you didn't do it.
Yeah. Just on a lighter note, have you ever run into situations with training clients where you had something or somebody go completely off the rails, I'll just call it a bad customer experience?
Fortunately, not a ton that I can recall. Usually what tends to happen is people, like I said, I don't think I've ever really had clients, most people for the most part tend to be non-confrontational. Mm-hmm. So, I've had disagreements with clients before and had issues with, certain things. And it's just like, in the end, I'm never the one I'm like, what, maybe this isn't working out, or, but more, I don't even usually have to say that. They'll just say, all right, this doesn't work for me. I'll be like, that's perfectly fine. I apologize if there's anything we did, but, I'll do my best. And I'm pretty easy-going. Yeah. I'm pretty laid back. I'm not super confrontational. So I'm just like, hey, it's not worth my trouble to make to make a point with somebody or make somebody feel bad because they did something bad to me.
Yeah.
That's great, but I'm just like, look, it's way easier just let things go and be okay with that. Now, if I can do that more with my driving, I'll be I'll be a lot better off. But unfortunately,
that's a lot of people.
Yeah, but that mammalian brain kicks in, and you cut me off. I'm so angry. And no, that's so. I was like, oh, pull over. Oh, no, it's not. I'm like, wait a minute. And I try to become a lot more like empathetic. Like, you know what? They probably just didn't see me. That was a mistake. How many times have I made that mistake? Just breathe and get to where you're going. There's no reason, and for the most part, that's it. But if you approach everything in that situation, try to empathize, try to sympathize, try to be like, all right, I know where they're coming from, or I have some idea where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. So try to understand them, and most people appreciate that.
Gotcha. That's awesome. When you said you were doing Muay Thai, mixed martial arts training for a long time. Any celebrities or really cool people you were able to meet during that?
Oh, well, I mean, my original gym out of Athens, Forrest Griffin was the light heavyweight champion for a little while in the UFC. So, I consider him a good friend at times. I haven't hung out with him a while, but he was a training partner coming up. We actually started training right at the same time with the same coaches, Adam and Rory Singer, who were out of Athens, and they've had plenty of very good fighters, a few champions as well out of their gym. Brian Bowles, who is, I can't remember I think it was Bellator or IFC, I can't remember, but he was a lightweight champion for quite a while. Nice. I met him working at Walmart. He was working in the freezers at Walmart, and I was restocking.
Wow.
And I had one of my amateur fights on TV on the video because he wanted to see me fight. And then he was like, oh, you do that? He's like, well, me and my buddy Steven, we wrestled. I was like, dude, come on out.
Wow.
Well, Brian went on to be a pretty high-level champion in MMA. He fought in the UFC for quite a while.
Nice.
Steven fought a number of grappling championships and submission tournaments and did really well. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's really, really good. I met those guys at Walmart.
Wow.
They were working in the freezer at Walmart.
Wow.
And I said, hey, come into my gym over here in Athens. So it's kind of neat to have known some of these guys coming up. I've got to meet a lot of different coaches and fighters along the way too. Got to work with Steve Smith for a little while.
Nice.
The season right before his final season with Baltimore. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with other pro athletes before, but when you work with somebody when you work with the elite of the elite, one of the guys who's considered one of the best of all time, and you get to spend time with someone like that, you get a really strong sense of what it takes to be a high-level performer, someone who's one of the best at what they do.
Yeah.
Amazing dude. I think he got a kind of bum rap in the press. He was so impressive, and a lot of fun, and a really good guy overall. And I love the way he approached everything, and almost like the chip on his shoulder he had towards everything that he went for.
That's what motivated him.
Dude, who a 5'8", 5'9" receiver that does what he does?
Yeah.
They're all supposed to be 6'5" and like super long and have like super big hands and all those things. And like Steve was like a halfback coming out of college, and became one of the best receivers ever just because he was relentless. Love that. I love watching his videos. He's just constantly going. So I feel fortunate to have witnessed that, and you get to admire, like, man, that's a different type of person right there, and that's amazing to see that. So gotten to work with people like him, but those are the things where it's like, wow, it's neat to get to know people like that and realize like that's what a high performing individual, regardless of the field, that's usually and a lot of very successful business owners I've worked with, whether it's commercial real estate, whether it's different types of entrepreneurs, you get to see them and see how they excel, and you start to delineate those specific things, that you start to identify those specific things that like are particular to those types of people, and maybe try to emulate them on some level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
People don't realize what it takes to be that kind of athlete. I mean, the drive and the dedication, yeah, for sure, but also the natural skill and ability.
And the work ethic. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy. There was speaking of Steve Smith, I remember on the radio somebody was relaying that when he was in special teams, and he was going to take the kickoff, and the coach knew chip on the shoulder attitude and what Steve would do, and they needed a touchdown.
Yeah.
So the guy walks up to Steve Smith and he goes, hey, I really don't think you're going to be able to make this one, and you're certainly not going to be able to, go for 7, so you just need to kneel it out. And Steve was like, are you kidding? No freaking way. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, really, honestly, you're not going to be able to do this. He's like, watch me.
Yeah.
He takes it for 6 all the way down the field.
Yeah.
The fact that somebody can go off of that.
Yeah. No, he's part of that group of people that's just like, that have that level of competition, and that in their blood, they just know they're going to make this next play, or they're going to make it happen somehow. And in his life, he's going to make it happen somehow. And he, as we had some discussions, it was how he was with his business, his future business ventures, and what he wanted. So a lot of fun to work with that guy.
The fact that, it's almost like the stuff they do even after being an athlete, especially if they're really business minded, is just, it's even more impressive sometimes than their real athletic venture.
Herschel Walker. Everybody knows who Herschel Walker was. University of Georgia, Dallas Cowboys. But most people don't realize he's one of the biggest distributors of chicken in Texas now.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. I may have gotten some of the details wrong, but it's one of those things. He has an amazingly huge business after the fact. So,
wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think. Just to... I'll kind of close it off here. So we've got training packages with Edge Performance Training. We have equipment package that we offer with them, and then training sessions. I think we've got 1 month and 2 month training sessions with these guys. And Dan's just an awesome coach, and their whole team is pretty incredible, as you can hear. So I love the training methodology that you're using, and everything behind the methodology you're using for Edge Performance Training. It's refreshing to hear that you're actually, you care so much about the coaching staff. A lot of the commercial gyms just don't do that at all.
Right.
It's you got your cert, you're good for the next 10 years.
Not so much.
And I love that you're just approaching it from a different way. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But we appreciate Dan coming
Absolutely.
by. Yeah, and we'll hopefully keep partnering on all this stuff.
Definitely.
So thanks for coming by, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for listening. Please give FreedomCast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean a lot to our business. Plus, it's fun to read y'all's reviews. See you next time.